Welcome to the Power and Market Report. I'm Albert Liu. I'm happy to be joined now by a technology entrepreneur who was actually the first angel investor in a Bitcoin-related startup. His name is Roger Ver, and he joins me tonight from Thailand. Roger, welcome to the Power and Market Report. How are you?
Thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure to have you on. I want to talk to you first about the article that came out recently out of Wired and Gizmodo, claiming that people have discovered the identity of the originator of Bitcoin, Satoshi, who goes by Satoshi Nakamoto. Some people have been poking holes in this story. I'd like to know what your take on it is. Is this the real guy, or is this just another false alarm?
I think it's pretty likely to just be another false alarm, and I think it's pretty unlikely that they ever are going to find the real Satoshi. And one really interesting thing that Bitcoin allows in regards to this is there's online betting sites where people can bet as to whether or not this person is the real Satoshi or not. And these are real people risking real money on whether or not he is, and that's a lot better indication as to whether or not he is than just some article on the internet or some guy talking on a podcast. Like, look at where the real money is being bet. If they're betting that he is the real Satoshi, then maybe he is, and if they're betting that he's not, then he probably isn't. And right now, there's a lot more money being bet on the fact that he's not.
Who in your mind would be the arbiter of something like this, or what would you have to see to be convinced that this was the real person?
PGP keys signing some sort of statement, like that's indisputable mathematical proof, assuming the private keys weren't leaked intentionally in advance or from a hacker. But so far, there haven't been any PGP signed emails of any sort whatsoever, and that's what I would like to see to believe this sort of thing.
Okay, and then, but the message that has come out since saying that this is not Satoshi, what authentication has that person provided?
Not much either. So.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to Bitcoin itself. Bitcoin has been in the news pretty consistently for several years, and it's, I guess the adoption has continued. I don't use it myself, but I have found it interesting that the way it's evolved, and at this point, it looks to me kind of like a lifeboat currency. I know that some people do use it as a day in and day out currency, but every once in a while you see these spikes, and these spikes seem to correspond to distress in currency markets elsewhere. We see it, for instance, when there's trouble in China, Bitcoin spikes. When there's other problems, Bitcoin spikes, as if people are fleeing. That's why I call it a lifeboat, fleeing whatever boat they're on to escape on this currency. How long do you think it'll take? I'm presuming you believe it will at some point make this transition away from sort of an emergency vehicle for people to transport wealth across borders and whatnot to something more stable where you don't see this wild volatility every time something happens.
It's going to take some time, and we're talking years or maybe a decade or even more, but it's very, very clearly happening. And the biggest problem for Bitcoin right now, I guess one of the biggest problems right now, is that when people hear about Bitcoin for the first time, most of them think, oh, that's too good to be true. That can't be real. There can't be a money that you can send and receive with anyone anywhere on the planet basically for free. No one can stop you. No one can freeze your account. Governments can't control it, and the value is likely to go up over time instead of down. Like, that just seems too good to be true. But it is true. It is real. It's here, and we can all use it today. But the reason the price swings so much is because the total market cap of all the Bitcoins in the world is just a few $billion, and that's almost nothing in the grand scheme of things. So if Bitcoin really becomes popular all over the world, each single Bitcoin that today is worth 400 and something dollars is going to have to be worth $40,000 or maybe even $400,000 or even $1 million for a single Bitcoin is well within the realm of possibility. And that sounds like kind of pie in the sky talk. But if you sit down and do the math, it's very clear. There's never going to be more than 21 million Bitcoins in the entire world. So there's not even enough for everybody, even in California, to have one, let alone the entire United States or the entire world. So if Bitcoin becomes really popular, each single Bitcoin is going to have to be worth a heck of a lot more than it is today. And until that happens, the price volatility isn't going to calm down. But the overall trend is up. So my goal is to be exposed to as much of that volatility as I possibly can over as long a period as I possibly can. And so far, that's worked out really well for me.
Do you see sort of a single impediment to its adoption? Because the way I see it, the world has never needed something like this more, in the sense that all of this chaos, all of the trouble we see in the financial world, it sort of centers around fiat currencies and sovereign debt and those things. It's sort of the epicenter of all the problems. And we really have never needed something like this more. Why do you think it's taking this long to get adopted?
There's no official company behind Bitcoin. It's just an open source protocol that anybody can use. So there's no, giant marketing campaigns behind it. It's just a whole bunch of companies. And for originally, it was just a whole bunch of enthusiasts that weren't getting paid anything. So nobody really started paying much attention to Bitcoin at all until 2013, and even then it was just a small segment. And even today, in a lot of places, you ask someone, "Have you heard of Bitcoin?" In the U.S., maybe most people have heard of it at this point, but even in the rest of the world, most people haven't even heard of it, let alone used it yet. But it takes time. But it's our job as people who understand Bitcoin and appreciate what an incredibly powerful tool for good it is in the world. It's our job to spread it and tell our friends and tell our family and tell everybody around us about Bitcoin and how wonderful it is for all of humankind.
Apologize, Roger, you broke up a little bit there at the end, but I want to follow up with this. You used to live here, you travel around the world now, attending Bitcoin conferences and obviously running your businesses as well. Culturally, where do you see the most culturally friendly attitude toward Bitcoin? And where does the US rank? Because like you said, it is, a lot of people here do at least know about it. I'm wondering, what have you seen around the world in terms of people's willingness to consider something that's really different and aggressive?
I know everyone's an individual, and within these various groups, there's different individuals with different opinions. But the Dutch really seem to have taken a liking to Bitcoin, and there's quite a bit of activity in Holland with adoption of Bitcoin, and the U.S. actually there's quite a bit of adoption and things going on. And one of the most powerful reasons I think for people in the U.S. to use Bitcoin, even people that aren't interested in economics or central banking and monetary policy and that sort of stuff. Right now, today, at every single Starbucks in the entire United States, you can instantly save 20% by paying in Bitcoin using foldapp.com is the website. And it works instantly. It's super easy. 20% off at every single Starbucks that's a powerful motivating factor, because we all know how much, the stereotypical American loves their Starbucks. And there's another great tool called purse.io, so www.purse.io. And you can save 10, 20, even 30% off every single product from Amazon just by paying in Bitcoin. And, I don't know a single person in my life that doesn't like to save money. So if you can save 20% off at Starbucks and 25% off at Amazon just by using Bitcoin, that's a really, really powerful tool to bring new people into turning them into Bitcoin users. And I think the biggest problem at this point is that people haven't heard of those services yet. And then maybe the second biggest problem is that if they hear about it, that kind of seems too good to be true. But they're both, completely real and legitimate and work wonderfully. And I use them all the time in my daily life.
Uh, okay, so as an example, the Starbucks program you mentioned, is that a Starbucks run program, or is that a third party that is offering the service for people? How do they do that?
So there's a third-party company that what they do is they have one website that offers to buy people's Starbucks gift cards at a discount, because a lot of people can earn Starbucks cards from their credit card reward points or all sorts of various things, and then they just they sell that to this other website for maybe 40% off for something the value of the card, and then this website turns around and sells those same gift cards to anybody who wants them for Bitcoin at a 20% discount. So the Bitcoin user saves 20%, and the person that's selling the gift cards, they didn't want them anyhow, so they get maybe just 40% less than the face value. So it's a win-win situation for everybody involved.
It absolutely is. Now, you've been involved in startup companies, Bitcoin-related companies, from the very beginning. So you're a great person to ask how the research and development has morphed over the years. You mentioned individuals, enthusiasts, those type of people involved. Now I'm hearing that there's a lot of activity in Bitcoin. So what are you seeing? Who is driving really the development of Bitcoin at this point?
Yeah, it's just brings a giant grin to my face to think about how far it's come. So 5 years ago, when I first got involved in Bitcoin, it was just a few computer nerds that were interested on it about it, and you had time to read every single post on the forum about it, and there there wasn't much other than us, computer nerds, most of which were, voluntarist, market anarchist types, um, that were excited about this. And then today, I just came back from a Bitcoin conference in Korea a couple of days ago. The Bitcoin conference was sponsored by the Industrial Bank of Korea. Like, banks are sponsoring Bitcoin conferences now, and that's just unimaginable a couple of years ago. So it's anyone and everyone. Nasdaq is using the Bitcoin blockchain to do stuff. It's just amazing. Every single bank around the world at this point is looking into Bitcoin and how they can integrate it into what they're doing. All the traditional remittance companies are looking into it. The fact that banks are sponsoring Bitcoin conferences still just is mind blowing to anybody who's been following the space for any amount of time. So now it's anyone and everyone's getting involved. Overstock.com just got approved by the SEC to allow trading of their stock in their company on the Bitcoin blockchain. Or that's just amazing. So it's publicly traded companies are getting involved in Bitcoin at this point. So it's everybody. I Initially the snowball was a little tiny thing and it was at the top of the hill, and now it's just rolling downhill and picking up more and more momentum. And that momentum is in the form of banks and publicly traded companies along the way that are hopping on the Bitcoin bandwagon. It's really amazing.
It is amazing. I can appreciate why you'd be happy about that. At the same time, with banks, with securities comes regulation. Do you have concerns in that area in terms of what that might do to the development?
Of course, I studied economics, so anytime the government gets involved in the economy, they cause misallocations of resources and they prevent the world from being as wealthy as it otherwise would have been. So, of course, I'm concerned about that from a practical economic standpoint. And then, of course, there's the moral philosophy in there as well. It's a small group of people telling other people, you have to obey us or we're going to hurt you if you don't. That's crazy too. So, it's crazy on both the economic side of things and it's crazy on the moral philosophy side of things. So, of course, I'm concerned about that. But at the end of the day, I really think Bitcoin is kryptonite to the state. And Bitcoin's going to win at the end of the day. It's going to strip away the power from all the central bankers and regulators, and it's going to strip away their power to have control over peaceful individuals living their lives and interacting with each other on a voluntary basis. So that's why I have a giant grin from ear to ear every day I'm working on Bitcoin, because this is going to, set the entire world free of the, the rule, our ruling masters in government.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? I know, I asked you about timeframes. That's obviously difficult. The adoption is slow. It kind of goes its own way. But what exactly do you see as the end game? You talk about elimination of central banks and even states. What do you see as the end game here?
For me, I see the end game as I want to use Bitcoin as a lever to move the world in a direction in which all human interaction is on a voluntary basis. And we don't have little small groups of people demanding that the rest of the world obey their arbitrary rules and dictates. And that to me, that's just crazy. And if you look around the world at how many wars and deaths and bombings and just horrible destruction that's causing, it's clear that there's a better way, and the better way is voluntary human interaction. Human interaction should be voluntary, consensual, and voluntary, or not at all. And the essence of government is that it's people threatening peaceful people with violence if they don't obey their will. And Bitcoin puts a stop to that by cutting off their funding supply and cutting off their ability to control the money supply. And wow, what a powerful, amazingly powerful tool for good that is.
Yeah, I appreciate and respect that as a goal. I share it actually. But I have trouble seeing it going that way. And here's why. And feel free to object. I look forward to your answer actually. But I don't see Bitcoin is a marvelous technology, no doubt, no doubt. But a lot of the problems that we have now, I don't see as sort of rising due to a lack of technology. They're more philosophical, moral problems and related to coercion and the threat of violence. And I'm wondering how Bitcoin will overcome that.
So Bitcoin is the first currency that the world has ever had in which no amount of violence alters the way in which it works. So if you're using PayPal, men with guns, calling themselves the USA government or the IRS or whatever, can go to PayPal and say, give us all of the money that's in Albert's account at PayPal or Roger's account or whoever's account, or undo this transaction, or undo that. With Bitcoin, there's no place that anybody can do that. So anybody, as long as they don't physically have your body in a cage, you can send and receive money with anybody you want anywhere in the world, and there's absolutely nothing that any amount of violence can do to stop that. And that changes the whole system. That changes the whole game. And there's no longer it takes away the ability of central banks to just print money at will. If you or I print more dollars, green pieces of paper, you and I go to jail for counterfeiting because it's destructive to the economy and it steals wealth from everybody else who's using dollars. When central banks do the exact same thing, printing money, it has the exact same negative effects. The only difference is they don't go to jail and they call it fancy names like quantitative easing or economic stimulus, but it's the exact same thing and it's bad for the exact same reasons. And with Bitcoin, all that power gets stripped away from them.
Okay, I see your point about having a central point of weakness, for example, a gold vault or PayPal or something like that. But I'm talking about more on a personal level. So think of a low-tech solution to that problem would be people transacting in coin, precious metal coin, or even dollars, I mean printed dollars, transacting on their private property with people. That certainly is hard to defeat if it's implemented on a mass scale. Meaning, if everyone was doing that, paying for their food or household services, nannies, maids, and all that stuff. Some people do that in the underground market, but if everyone was doing it, that would be very difficult to stop. Yet most people don't do that
with dollars. You can't because you can't do that with dollars. So you're in the U.S. right now, and I'm guessing. Did I hear you correct earlier saying you haven't actually used Bitcoin yet?
I haven't.
So if you don't mind, I would love to show you a live demonstration of the power of Bitcoin. Do you have your smartphone handy?
Can
I'm going to
we?
send money. I'm going to send money from Thailand directly through Skype to your phone right there if you have it handy.
No.
And there's nothing that anybody can do to stop it.
I'm not disputing that. I've actually seen that happen. I've actually probably seen you do it actually on Skype. But my point is with paper dollars, okay, not bank deposits. I'm talking about cash.
With paper dollars, I can't do that. I'm in Thailand and you're in the US. With pieces of paper in my hand, I have no way to send them to you.
Okay,
With
no.
Bitcoin, I can do it anywhere in the world.
Agree. You know what? And I grant you that. People send, especially large sums of money across the world, you can't do that. But I'm just saying, people are not taking the small steps that they could. And certainly, most of the commerce occurs locally. But people are not doing that. People are not using the low-tech solution. So I'm wondering why you think that if we introduce a higher-tech solution, granted, it's like I said, a marvelous technology. Why do you think that's going to change something that seems to be psychological?
I think lots of people are using the lower tech solution, but part of the problem too with all these physical businesses is the biggest mafia in a geographical area, which most people just call the government, come in there and they tell the business owners, hey, you have to give us a cut of all the money that you're going to pay to your employees before the employees ever see it. And it almost brings tears to my eyes when I used to go and protest the income tax at the post office every April 15th in the US. And I remember one guy looked at me and said, no, I'm getting money back. And like they're paying me money on April 15th. And it's a bit frustrating because he doesn't understand that like, no, they're not paying you money. You're getting back part of the money that you gave to them as an interest-free loan for the last however many months. And it's a bit frustrating. So obviously education is important, but with Bitcoin, suddenly there's a tool that every business and everybody can use all over the world. And one example too of how I think Bitcoin kind of changes everybody's philosophy is there's a person that I know in my personal life who's not a libertarian, not a voluntarist. He loves government, loves the war on drugs, loves what governments are doing. But he saw the value in Bitcoin that the supply is limited, and if more and more people start to use it, the price is going to go up. So he bought about $10,000 worth of Bitcoins when Bitcoins was maybe, I don't know, in $25 range or something like that. And then a few months later, suddenly Bitcoin had become a couple $100. And he comes to me almost in a panic. And this is someone who literally, he loves the war on drugs. He loves government. He thinks governments are great. And if we didn't have government, he thinks the whole world would just fall apart. And he loves taxes, of course, as well. But he comes to me and he goes, Roger, I need your help. And I'm like, what's wrong? What can I do to help you? And he goes, I need you to show me how to hide my Bitcoins, because he didn't want to pay the capital gains taxes that he'd accrued on his Bitcoins. And I think that's a real, strong testament to statists. They want everybody else to pay their money to, fund the Leviathan. But when it comes to their own money, they want to hide it and they don't want to participate. So, Bitcoin suddenly gives every statist the ability to hide their own money. And maybe when it comes to their own money, these statists are quite a bit more libertarian. And Bitcoin gives all of them a tool to hide their own money. And I think that's a great thing, because even though maybe philosophically he thinks government is great, when it comes to his own money, he's not willing to fund them. And I think that's a good thing for all of humankind, because I think him spending his own money on his own things to improve his own life will will make the world a much better place than him giving a bunch of money to, some politicians somewhere. And if he wants to, he can still donate his own money to the politicians. Just don't force the rest of us to do that.
Yeah, and it's interesting how often they choose not to do that.
It is.
Roger, you've been involved, from what I've read, a lot on the Bitcoin side. I want to talk to you a little bit just about what's going on with the blockchain. It seems that people are discovering alternative uses for distributed ledgers, and I feel like I'm just beginning now to appreciate how that's going to change things, the multiple applications for this distributed ledger. Can you talk about anything in particular that you're excited about, that you're seeing with the blockchain?
Yeah, there's another project that I'm really, really excited about called BitcoinHivemind.com. And what that is it's basically a decentralized prediction market. And talk about an incredibly powerful, useful tool for every human being on the planet. Basically, you can harness the wisdom of crowds, and people can place bets with real money on whatever future event they think is going to happen. And basically, this has the net effect of becoming almost like a window for human beings to see into the future. So we can see, if we take this particular action today, what is likely to be the future outcome from that action today. And then you can have derivatives from multiple actions today. So let's say you have, people are predicting whether or not, Hillary or Trump is going to be the next president. And then if they raise taxes, the economy will grow at this rate or that rate. And basically it becomes this incredibly powerful tool to predict, if we take this particular action today, what is the likely future result, 5 years from now or in the future. And we can use that tool to guide us as to what the appropriate action is to take today to achieve the desired results tomorrow. And before Bitcoin and this, blockchain technology, any sort of prediction market like that, got shut down by governments, because in addition to becoming a window into the future, it can also become a tool to influence the future. And then there are a couple of websites like InTrade and things like that, where politicians were really worried that people are going to use it to not only predict the outcome of an election, but perhaps influence the outcome of an election. But thanks to, Bitcoin and the blockchain, now we have these tools that can't be shut down or censored or controlled. And BitcoinHivemind.com is a really interesting example of one of those that's being built and is just about ready. And what an incredibly interesting and powerful tool for people all over the world to have this window to peer into the future. It's almost like a time machine or a time window into seeing the future. And before Bitcoin, that sort of thing wasn't possible, because governments would shut down anybody that was trying to build one, whereas now we can build an unstoppable, uncensorable one.
I'm sorry if you mentioned this at the beginning, but is this a company that you're actually involved in, or funding, or an officer or director in?
So I've been funding it just because I think it's an interesting tool, because it is such an interesting tool. So there's been a whole bunch of things in the Bitcoin space that I've just been putting money towards, because I think it'll make the world a better, more interesting, and better place for everybody. And dying with a bunch of money doesn't do any good. So I intend to spend it on things to make the world and my life better.
I heard you tell Jeff Berwick in an interview that you had been at least receiving requests, consulting requests from banks. And I've noticed that there's a lot of activity now about relating to, I guess, trade settlement, derivatives, real-time reconciliation. What are your thoughts on where that's going? Basically, how Bitcoin or blockchain-related technology is going to be embedded deeply into the financial system. I can see how there would be tremendous efficiencies to be gained there. What do you see for the end user, though, for investors? Do you have any comments on that? Is it going to be a net gain?
Yeah, anytime the economy becomes more efficient, that frees up human labor to be, used for other things and produce other things. And I believe it was Murray Rothbard who said it, or certainly some, economists that I'm a fan of said, the goal isn't full employment, the goal is full production. And that's exactly right. So if we have all these people that are working in the banking industry to do settlements and this and that, and suddenly half of them lose their jobs because the Bitcoin blockchain can do it, that's a wonderful, fantastic thing, because now all those people and their human energy and labor that was previously being used to help with all the settlement stuff, now that can be used to produce more cars or more clothes or more food for people to eat or other things that will improve people's lives. And the world as a whole is going to be, a richer place because of that. And so many people don't seem to understand that sort of thing, is that the goal isn't full employment. The goal is full production. And the Bitcoin blockchain is going to help us be able to produce even more in the world. And that's a great thing for every human being on the planet.
Roger, a reference to Murray Rothbard is just the perfect way to conclude an episode of the Power and Market Report. So thank you for that. And thank you for being my guest tonight. I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful talking to you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
My guest has been Roger Ver, and please check out his website at bitcoin.com. Also, don't forget to visit powerandmarket.com for insightful interviews with the world's leading experts in economics, finance, and investing. Until next time, take care.